Last time we saw how we can use a facial key point detector model to track the key points of our eyes and to give us a beep whenever we blink our eyes. It was a fun use case to do, and in that video I mentioned that we can use the same technique or the same model to do another use case, which is to count how many times did we yawn in a given session. So in this video, we're going to discuss that same use case. It would be a nice continuation from the previous video since we would not have to modify our code too much. So let's go to our code and check what all modifications will we have to do for this new use case. So in our last video, we had this index.html, which was the main page of our project, and we had this controller.js, which had all the controlling logic for the deep learning model, which basically detects the facial key points. We also had this index.js, which had all the logic which we had written, and which is our business logic. And we also had some other files which we used to build that project. But we will not be needing variables to store two distances, because earlier we were tracking the blinking of our eyes, but now we will just be concerned with our mouth. So let's just check on the mesh map to see which points we will be using in our project. You would remember that we had used this map earlier and we had figured out which points we will be using for our purpose. So we'll do the same exercise this time as well, and we'll just zoom in to the area which is of our concern. So here we can see that point number 12, 13, 14, and 15 seem to be of our use. If we want to use the averaging logic which we used previously, we can take a pair of points such as 38 and 268 and 82 and 86 and 316. So let's see what works best. But basically, we'll be using the distance between the upper lip and the lower lip to track whether we are opening our mouth more than a certain extent or not, to track yawns. So let's see what all things do we need to modify in our code. So this is the code in its previous state from our blink detection project. And we'll just go ahead and remove all the unnecessary things. So we would not be needing two variables to store our readings, so we'll remove one. And I'm removing the right eye, and you can might as well remove left eye with no issues. I had also added a couple of more functions to track, to just vary threshold on the page. So these functions basically deal with that. Let's just open this HTML file once and check, and I'll show you real quick what modifications did I make after the video. Okay, there is my face. And so I basically added like a slider threshold so that I can vary the threshold from the page itself, and you can see if I vary the threshold too much in the wrong direction, the computer will start beeping even if I have my eyes open. So that deals with that, and this check button basically deals with putting this face mesh on and off. So yeah, that's, and all the other things stay the same. So let's just remove what we don't need. So we'll remove this, and smoothing is fine. We don't need two lines on our chart, so we will remove that. We will remove one of the lines, which is the right eye. So let's remove that. Okay, and we need not have right eye. Right eye goes. Then this part also goes because this deals with the right eye. And this condition goes away. This. Okay, so we have removed everything which deals with right eye, right? That's cool. So Now let's see what changes do we need to make in our index.html. Clearly we don't need, we want to change the project title. Number of yawns using facial key point detection model. Cool. And yeah, we might also want to add a tag which will basically keep a track of the yawn counts. So we will just call that yawn tag, and we will just have a default string which will appear on the page when the home page is open, which can be yawns counted is equal to 0. Yep. So that's it, and we can maybe call this, have this as an h3 tag. Okay. So everything else can remain same because we don't want to, we don't need anything else to change basically. Instead of alarm threshold, maybe we can have just threshold, because we don't have, we will not be having an alarm this time. Cool. So we can save this and go back to our, we don't want to change anything pretty much in the controller.js because this is standard code for the facial key point detection, and we've just added one hook within this whole file, which will be this call processing function, which will basically take the code to index.js, and that's all we want to do in this file. So we need not change anything basically in this one. Okay, let's get back to index.js, and we will start writing our business logic to count yawns. So predictions xval threshold remains same. It's just that we want to change this. We want to make this variable as mouth reading, and we want to call this as, let's say, mouth average. And yeah, and maybe we want to change our graph title, which will be between lips, because we will be tracking the distance between our upper and lower lip. And here we will have our mouth average, and the legend will say mouth. Okay. Yeah, that should do. We want to comment this out because we don't want to use a beep, but I'm just keeping the code there because you might want to sound a beep whenever you're yawning during a lecture or an online tutorial. So then, yeah, so here is the exact point where we basically take 2 points. We calculate the distance between those 2 points using the dist_vec function, and we average the distance and store it in our left eye variable. So we've just made that variable now as mouth reading. So we will just push that value inside mouth reading. So we'll change that to mouth reading, and maybe we can just call this mouth, and we will push that to our mouth reading variable. Now we just want to, so this code is pretty simple. We just want to change few things, and we would just see how it works. So let's just replace all the occurrences of mouth reading with, yeah. So we will just say left reading, and we will paste mouth reading here. And yeah. Okay, it didn't change. Okay, so index.js, no, we don't want to change. Okay, it's reading all the occurrences in my all the files. So I don't want to change anything in Blink Detector project. I just want to change in my Yawn counter project. So I will just do that. And okay, I'm not very well versed with, yeah, I need to get better at VS Code. Anyway, now we will modify the left average variable, and I can do the same thing with this one. So I'll just replace in this file. Okay, so now I have all the variables sorted, and let's just open the file and see whether we are getting any errors or not. Okay, so we have our heading changed, we have the subheading changed, we have this yawns counted is equal to 0 here, we have all the aesthetics changed basically, but the business logic has not changed. So if I close my eye, there should be an error, and it gave an error because the thing stopped and saying that beep is not defined because we commented beep and it is not able to find it. So let's just uncomment it and reload this page and see if things work normally. Okay, so if I close my eye, it's giving a beep. I open it, and if I should just close my left eye, it should give a beep. So I just wink and see, yeah. So now things are not dependent on my right eye because I have totally removed it from the code. And if I close the right eye, you can see there's no beep. So now it is only looking at my left eye. And just by changing the key point number, I can make it track my mouth. So let's try that. Okay, now I just have to change the key point number which I'm looking at. So let's say I want to track 38 and 86 and 268 and 316. 268 and 316. Now let's just refresh this page. Okay, so now the code is continuously beeping because the distance between my lips is mostly less than the threshold. But let's say if I make it 0. Okay, still no beep. Maybe because the logic is that the distance should be less than the threshold. So it's not going less than 0, so it's not beeping. But anyway, we don't want to sound an alarm or beep when the threshold, when the distance between the lips is falling below a threshold. We want to do the reverse. We want to sound an alarm or increase our counter whenever the distance is going above that threshold, because only then there is a yawn. So let's just modify that. That would be a very simple modification. We'll just go and change this to this. And I think that should do the trick. And I just reload. Okay. So let's see what is the distance between my two lips. It's going below 0. But if I start talking, the threshold gets around 50, 60. So I have to increase the threshold to, let's say, a safe value, let's say 80. And now if I want to make it beep, I would just open my mouth slightly. You see? So from this experiment, we can gauge that the threshold of 80 is very low for tracking yawns. It can maybe track whether you're talking or whether you're moving your mouth too much or not. So we want to increase that threshold to maybe 100, 200. 100 would also be low, I believe. So we would have to change the default range in which this, this threshold slider is viewed on the page. So let's just make this 50 and let's just call this 500 and let's reload. Okay, so it is okay. Let me make this threshold higher and make it around 394 or 400. And now let's see how much I can open my mouth. Okay, now this graph is not giving us a correct picture, so we'll have to modify that as well. Okay, so we can go ahead and make this 1000. Let's modify this. Cool. Let's make this threshold equal to 400 and let's open our mouth. Okay, so even if I open my mouth completely, the distance does not go above 400. So I can maybe place a threshold above 350 around. And now let's check that. Okay, I took a proper yawn, but still there was no beep. So I can take the threshold further down. Let's make it 300. Okay, now there was a slight yawn. Okay, so maybe you can keep your threshold below 280 and you can set this value according to your environment and your needs. But I'm just showing you a couple of examples to give you a proper understanding of how this is working. So let's try again. Okay, so there are two things basically coming up in these experiments. One is the threshold part and the other is the duration of our yawns. We can play around with this different parameter which is called smoothing. So maybe we can add another slider here using which we can tweak the smoothing parameter and see which value of smoothing will be best suited for our yawns. So I can configure it according to my yawning and you can do it according to yours. And when you figure out the correct value, you would have a proper yawn monitor. But let's do something else which is more important, and then we can come and play again with the smoothing parameter, which is to make this yawn counter dynamic. So how can we do that? We just need to implement a function. So function to update yawn tag. So we'll just create a function update yawn tag and we will get our element which is our yawn tag and we'll update the inner HTML of this yawn tag with a new string which is called yawns counted is equal to plus this val. Now, what will be this val? We have to create a variable which is a yawn counter which will keep track of how many yawns have been counted. So, yeah, and we will comment out this beep call and we will call the update yawn tag with our updated yawn counter value, and we will also update the yawn counter value whenever this condition is successful. So now let's reload the page and see what effect does this have. Okay, so you see as soon as I moved my lips, the counter ran like anything. Why is that happening? Because it is registering a yawn even if I'm just talking, because the threshold is very low. So let's just set like a high value for default threshold so that this miscount does not happen. So let's say we will call this 300. We will call this 300. We will make this 50 minimum, and a maximum of 500, let's say. So we'll have to make this also as 300. Okay, so let's check what happens when we yawn and how the counter moves. I put a threshold of 300. I can maybe change it to 250 so that I get some higher reading. So I'll just open my mouth. Okay, so now you see that I just opened my mouth once. Basically, I yawned once, but the yawn counter shows 21. Now that's a problem because because we don't want to keep updating our yawn tracker or your counter for the whole duration for which a yawn lasts. We just want to update it once for every yawn, which can be a 10-second or a 5-second period. So to do that, we want to add another variable which will be yawn status maybe, and we'll just say it's false. So this will be a Boolean variable which will keep track of the state in which the distance between the lips is. And the way to implement this would be if whenever this distance goes above the threshold, we will check whether this yawn status is false or not. If it is false, we will update the counter and we will make this yawn status true. So whenever the yawn condition becomes true, there will be an update to the yawn counter, but only once, because as soon as there is an update, the yawn status will become true, and which will make this condition false. But we want to return back to our original state whenever the yawn ends. So whenever this condition becomes false, that is, the distance again falls below the threshold, we would just return the yawn status back to its original condition. So let's see how this works and whether we are able to achieve our goal or not. So I'll just make this threshold 250 again, and I'll try to yawn. So you see, I have just yawned once, and the counter just went up by 1. So let me try that again. So you see, the yawn counter becomes 2. So this is how we implement this simple thing that the yawn counter should go up by only 1 whenever we make a yawn. We can also add the smoothing smoothing slider, which I talked about before, and play with different values of that smoothing parameter to see which value fits us well. Because every person is different and every person would be yawning differently with different amplitude and different duration. That's where intelligence comes into picture, and maybe we can train a sophisticated machine learning or deep learning model to keep a track of our key points and learn specifically for us or for me or for you how we yawn and for how long we yawn and what is the pattern of how our key points change when we do a particular kind of activity. But that can be a topic for some another video. So that's it for this video. I hope it was fun and I hope you got to learn something. I'm sure this would not have been heavy on TensorFlow or machine learning or AI, but it was just a simple logical tweak we could do to the code which we made in our previous video to just have a fun use case of a slightly different variation. So one of the biggest feedback which we got for our last video was that the video was too long. We've tried to keep this video shorter, but another reason for this video being short is that we didn't have a lot of heavy lifting to do because we had introduced TensorFlow JS and we've got that set up on our machine, and all the code setup was done in our previous video. So this video was just a simple modification of the code from the previous one. But we'll be continuously trying to improve the quality and the timing of and the duration of our videos going forward. But we would only be able to do that if you keep correcting the errors which we make, so that we can tune our weights and make a gradient descent towards better videos for you. So that's it from my side. See you in the next one. Thank you.